Jake's breath caught in his throat as the final buzzer blared across the stadium, a sharp electric sound that seemed to cut through the heavy tension in the air. His heart raced, his palms clammy as he stared at the screen in front of him. The crowd roared around him, but Jake could only hear the pounding of his own heartbeat. He glanced down at Max, his loyal German shepherd, who was sitting perfectly still beside him, eyes locked on the screen with an intensity that mirrored Jake's. They had bet everything on this moment. And now, with the final seconds ticking away, everything would either come crashing down or change forever. He held his breath as the last few digits flashed on the screen. There it was, the lottery numbers. His eyes widened. The ticket in his pocket, it matched. Max's head tilted slightly, almost as if the dog knew the gravity of what had just happened. Jake couldn't believe it. They had done it, they had won. But it wasn't just about the money. It was about everything they had sacrificed to get here. The countless nights spent worrying about bills, the years of uncertainty, the struggle to survive. Now, finally, it seemed like their chance had arrived. But as Jake clutched the crumpled ticket in his shaking hands, a dark thought crept into his mind. This wasn't just about winning money. It was about the price they would pay for this win. Jake had always been a cautious man, never one to take risks. But over the years, life had thrown everything it could at him. His job had barely covered the rent, let alone the mounting debts that seemed to swallow him whole. Max had always been there, a constant source of comfort, of loyalty. The German shepherd had seen Jake through his darkest days, his only true companion in a world that often seemed unforgiving. But this time it was different. Winning this lottery would change everything. But could it be trusted? As the days passed after the win, Jake and Max became the talk of the town. TV crews showed up at their modest home, reporters clamoring for a story, for a glimpse of the miracle dog and his lucky owner. Jake smiled through the interviews, nodding politely when the cameras were on him. But behind the scenes, his mind was racing. The more he thought about it, the more he realized something didn't feel right. The world was now watching them, and with that came a whole new set of dangers. The weight of their new life, of the attention they were receiving, was overwhelming. Max, ever faithful, seemed to understand the growing unease in Jake. The dog, who had once been a source of comfort, now felt like a protector, an unspoken guardian in a world that suddenly felt much too big. Max's sharp instincts, honed over years of companionship, had never been more important. Late one evening, as Jake sat on the couch, sipping a drink and trying to shake off the nerves that had been gnawing at him, Max's ears perked up. The dog's body went rigid, his gaze fixed on the window. Jake didn't need to ask what was wrong. He could see it, too, the shadow of a figure just beyond the glass. Before Jake could react, there was a knock at the door. His pulse spiked. He glanced at Max, who was already moving toward the door, growling low in his throat. The hair on the back of Jake's neck stood up. Who could it be at this hour? He opened the door to find a man standing in the dim light, his face partially obscured by a dark hat. There was something about him, something cold in his eyes, that sent a chill down Jake's spine. "I'm here about the winnings," the man said, his voice low, almost a whisper. "You've won something that's not yours to keep." Jake's blood ran cold. "What are you talking about?" he asked, his voice betraying his unease. The man took a step forward, his gaze never leaving Max, who now stood between them, a low growl rumbling in his throat. "That dog of yours can't protect you forever," the stranger sneered. "There are people who would take everything you've got, and they will." Jake's breath hitched. The man's words sent a rush of fear through him like an ice-cold wave crashing over his chest. Max stood his ground, the muscles in his body taut, eyes locked on the man. The stranger didn't seem intimidated by the dog, but there was something in his eyes that made Jake nervous, something more dangerous than just a simple threat. Without another word, the stranger turned and walked away, disappearing into the night as silently as he had come. Max's growl faded, but the unease lingered. Jake slammed the door shut, his mind racing. Who was that man? What did he mean? He glanced at Max, who sat quietly, his eyes never leaving Jake. "I don't know what this is about, Max," Jake said quietly, "but I don't like it." The next few days were a blur of paranoia. Jake couldn't shake the feeling that they were being watched. Every car that passed by seemed suspicious. Every person he met on the street felt like a potential threat. Max's instincts were razor-sharp and the dog's behavior grew more intense. He barked at strangers paced by the windows and refused to leave Jake's side. Jake didn't know what was happening, but he knew one thing for sure. They weren't safe anymore. Then one night, it all came to a head. A sleek black SUV rolled slowly up the street, headlights cutting through the darkness. Jake stood frozen at the window, his heart hammering in his chest. Max growled low, his body tense. The SUV stopped in front of their house, and without warning, a group of masked men stepped out, moving swiftly toward the front door. Jake's pulse surged. He grabbed the rifle he had kept for years, his hands shaking as he took aim. But before he could react, Max was already on the move. The German shepherd launched himself toward the intruders, barking ferociously, his body a blur of muscle and speed. Jake fired a shot into the air, but it was Max's attack that stopped the men in their tracks. The dog lunged at the nearest man, sinking his teeth into the arm of one of the attackers. The chaos that followed happened in a blur. The masked men scattered, retreating back to the SUV in panic as Max stood his ground, teeth bared. Jake's heart pounded in his chest as he watched the scene unfold. The men didn't dare try to fight back. Max had them outmatched. As they sped off into the night, Max stood tall, victorious. His eyes flickered to Jake, who was now standing in the doorway, breathless but unharmed. Jake dropped the rifle and rushed to Max's side. The dog was bloodied but otherwise unharmed, his body still vibrating with the adrenaline of the confrontation. Jake knelt down, his voice thick with emotion as he whispered, "You saved us, buddy. You saved everything." Max's tail wagged weakly, and Jake pulled him into a tight embrace. They had done it. They had faced the unimaginable and come out on top. In that moment, Jake realized something profound. This wasn't just about money. It wasn't about the prize or the winnings. It was about the bond they shared. Max had risked everything for him, and in return, Jake would do the same. The danger was over for now, but Jake knew one thing for certain. With Max by his side, they could face anything. They had won more than just a lottery. They had won a future, one built on trust, loyalty, and an unbreakable bond.